Chair Lindsay, the public is in.
Okay, thank you, City Manager Seisland. Welcome everyone to the City of Grosse Pointe Park Planning Commission. Tonight is December 16th, 2021. We are calling this meeting to order. City Manager, if you could call the roll for attendance.
Yes, thank you. Chair Lindsay,
Present.
Vice Chair Chesterton,
Present.
Commissioner Coletta,
Present.
Commissioner Evans,
Present.
Commissioner Samper, Commissioner Vitaki,
Present.
and Mayor Hodges.
Present.
Fantastic, thank you. Our first agenda item is the approval of the October 20th meeting minutes. Hopefully, have all members of the commission received the minutes, and has everyone had a chance to review?
Yes.
Yes.
Are there any corrections that need to be made? Okay, if there are no corrections to the minutes, we will do a unanimous consent, a voice vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it, and the minutes for October 20th are approved. City Manager Seisland, our next agenda item is public comments on agenda items. Do we have any public comments tonight?
I do have public comments, and they are all related to the public hearing that'll be later tonight. So on other agenda items, I have no public comment, and I see no other public comment in the queue.
Okay, great. Then we can move on to the next agenda item, which is new business. And for members of the public that are watching, we will come back to those comments when we have our public hearing on the Weyburn development. So the first order of new business is setting our 2022 meeting dates. If members of the committee will take a look, we have a list here from City Manager Seisland with proposed 2022 Planning Commission meeting dates as required by the Michigan Planning Enabling Act of 2008, sorry. Planning Commission shall meet at least 4 times a year. So we have proposed 6 meetings for 2022. We can certainly add in special meetings if there are items that come up before the Planning Commission or as a city manager or city administration sees fit. So the meeting dates that we are proposing are February 3rd, April 14th, June 1st, August 3rd, October 6th, and December 7th. I do know that there was one commissioner who had a conflict on April 14th. That is the week leading up to the Easter holiday. So we can take a look at that date. But if anyone has any dates that they know they have a major conflict or they'd like us to look at rescheduling, if you wanted to let us know now, or you can send an email to the city manager. Well, actually, you can't really send an email to the city manager. You should let us know now so we can take a look at those dates. So are there any comments on these proposed meeting dates? Anyone? And you can just raise your hand if you need to. If there are no questions or comments on the meeting dates, I would like to entertain if someone would like to propose a motion to approve the dates. City Manager, I would like to just take another look at that April 14th date. So if we could, I guess, approve the dates of February 3rd, June 1st, August 3rd, October 6th, December 7th, with a to be determined in April.
I'll make a motion to approve the dates
Okay.
just
thank you.
presented.
Commissioner Chesterton has made a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, I think that was 2 seconds, and I believe Commissioner Coletta got to that first. Okay, and for this, I would like to have City Manager Seisland call the roll for voting on the meeting dates, please.
Yes, Chair Lindsay,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chesterton,
Yes.
Commissioner Coletta,
Yes.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Vitaki,
Yes.
and Mayor Hodges.
Yes.
Okay, and the motion is approved. We have 5 dates set, 1 date in April to be determined, and we will touch base with everyone before our next meeting on that April date. Thank you. So the next item of new business we have is training session on special land use review. So that I'm going to turn over to City Manager Seislin and I believe Mr. Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Chair Lindsay. So as part of our process tonight, as we go later into the Weyburn development, working with Mr. Jackson and our building official, Terry Brennan, we thought that it would be good of the Planning Commission to have a short presentation for this training session before we go into our discussion. So with that said, I do have John with me as well. I'm hopefully going to give him some capabilities here that he can show a PowerPoint, and then we should be good to go. So 1 second. Courtney, if you can help me out as well. Okay, looks like it's working.
Can people see the presentation?
Got it.
All right, great. Well, good evening, everyone, and I appreciate the opportunity to meet you all. This is the first time I've had a chance to come to the Planning Commission and meet all the commissioners, so I appreciate you making time for this tonight. The topic that we wanted to talk about tonight was that I wanted to give you a little information on is the process of reviewing special condition uses. And it's obviously relevant considering the fact that the Planning Commission will be considering a use that requires this process. And some of the members on the Planning Commission are new and may not have had the opportunity to go through this process before. So again, I think this topic is relevant, and hopefully this will be helpful. And by all means, feel free to ask questions as I go through this. Okay, so first of all, the concept of the special category of uses, which has a lot of different names. Sometimes they're called special land uses, sometimes they're called conditional land uses, sometimes they're called permitted uses subject to special conditions. So they come in a lot of different terms, or a lot of different terminology, but it's all rooted in the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. And this is what gives the Planning Commission, your Planning Commission, and all the planning commissions in the state of Michigan, their authority to conduct business, to regulate uses, create zoning maps, create zoning ordinance amendments, and the ZBA to consider variances, special land uses, which we'll talk about tonight, and other types of approvals such as planned unit developments. But tonight we're really going to focus on the special land use part of this. And again, your ability to consider these uses are all rooted in the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. So every zoning classification, whether it's residential, commercial, office, industrial, generally has 2 categories of uses. One is principal uses that are permitted. And basically those uses, if an applicant comes in and requests that land use, if they comply with all the other requirements in the ordinance, parking, landscaping, setbacks, building height, and that sort of thing, that use would be allowed. Okay, so there's not really an opportunity to impose additional conditions on those permitted uses. If they meet the standards, then they're allowed to proceed. The second category of land uses is the one we're going to focus on today, and that's special land uses, or in the case of Grosse Pointe Park, they're called principal uses permitted subject to special conditions. All right, and basically some examples in Grosse Pointe Park of these uses. You have a zoning district that's called the Office Service District. And in that district, you have principal uses that are permitted subject to special conditions. And those include mortuaries, auto dealerships, medical or dental offices. In the RA and RB residential districts, you have these types of uses, and they include places of worship, schools, utility, and public services. In the RC and the RD district, you have places of worship, schools, utility, and public services, as well as multiple family districts. These uses fall into that second category of uses with permitted subject to special conditions. So if someone is proposing one of these uses with special conditions, there's a process established, again, in the State Act, and it's mirrored in your zoning ordinance. And that is, first of all, the Planning Commission holds a public hearing. So everyone within 300 feet of this proposed use gets notified by letter directly to the resident. And it's also published in the newspaper. That's a requirement of the State Act. So if an applicant, again, wants to use one of these special uses, the neighbors get notified and a notice goes out in the newspaper. So everyone should know that there's a special kind of use that's being requested. Then once the applicant submits their application, the Planning Commission will review it, and they'll review it according to two different sets of standards. One is specific standards, and that might include dimensional requirements for this kind of use, height requirements, open space requirements, maybe additional landscaping requirements, but it's something tangible, something measurable, all right? The second category of use is what we call general standards. And those standards are things like compatibility with surrounding uses, potential impacts of these uses on adjacent property, on public infrastructure, public services, and that sort of thing. So any kind of use that falls into this category, the Planning Commission reviews according to these two sets of standards. And I'll give you some examples moving forward. Once the Planning Commission reviews this use, they have options. They can either deny the proposed use, they can approve the proposed use, or they can approve it with specific and reasonable conditions. So for instance, if someone requests, the example I had earlier was a mortuary that's allowed in the Office Service District, and there is a concern of residents or concerns of the Planning Commission that that activity might adversely impact the neighbors, the Planning Commission could say, we want to add additional landscaping to offset the increased intensity. They could suggest that there be greater setbacks for the use so that there's less of an impact on adjacent properties. So reasonable standards, reasonable conditions can be placed on a use that directly relates to the potential impact of that use. The other part of it is the special land use process goes hand in hand with the site plan process. The two go together. So any kind of approval of a special condition use would include a condition that says subject to site plan approval, subject to approval of the proposed site plan, okay? And then in a second motion, the Planning Commission would act on the site plan, and they would say, it would include a condition, we approve the proposed site plan subject to special condition approval, so that the two are directly connected to each other, okay? So if there's a change in the site plan, it may very well trigger revisiting the special land use in the future. So those two go hand in hand. So I know this is a little bit small to see, but these are the general standards that you would apply if someone requested, again, let's say the mortuary in the office district. You would consider and you would deliberate amongst yourself as the planning commission to make a decision whether that mortuary is consistent and promotes the intent and the purpose of the zoning ordinance. Okay, so this is a discretionary decision. It requires judgment. It requires weighing the impacts of the proposed use and the sensitivity of the surrounding uses. Okay, and these standards, these general standards that I'm showing you right now, these come basically right out of the Zoning Enabling Act. Okay, that's where these come from. Are in the Zoning Enabling Act. So the other standards that you would consider is whether or not the proposed use is compatible with adjacent uses of land. Is it compatible with the natural environment? Is it going to have some kind of a negative impact on a creek or a waterway or flooding issues or something of that nature? Is the use compatible with the capacities of public service facilities? In other words, is it going to generate an increased demand for public services, whether that's police or fire or an impact on the park system or some other potential impact? Those are the kind of questions that deal with public service. And then last but not least, there's sort of this catch-all. Is the use consistent with the city's primary objective of preserving the public health, safety, and welfare of the community? Or are the impacts of the proposed use going to adversely affect the public health, safety, and welfare? And is it possible to offset that impact with things like I mentioned earlier, additional landscaping, additional site plan consideration, building design considerations? Is there a way to address those impacts to the satisfaction of the Planning Commission? So again, I'm going to repeat myself, but this is a Planning Commission decision. The Planning Commission makes this decision, and it's not a recommendation to City Council. It happens right here. The magic happens right here at the Planning Commission. So, here's an example. So in the City of Grosse Pointe Park zoning ordinance, auto dealerships are considered a special condition use, and it has specific conditions associated with it. You can open this dealership in the office district if there is no body, paint, or bump shops included in the operation of the dealership. So that's a very tangible aspect of the operation that wouldn't be allowed. A site of not less than 1 acre. So if you want to do a dealership in Grosse Pointe Park in the office service district, you have to have at least 1 acre. Again, very tangible, measurable standard. All storage of cars for sale, repair, and parking have to be provided on the site. So again, these are all very tangible, specific standards that you have in your ordinance that relate to auto dealerships. And mortuaries may have specific standards that relate to them. Multiple family developments in the residential district have specific standards that relate to them. So each use may have specific conditions. So again, this is an example of specific standards that you would consider compared to the general standards that we talked about a second ago. One other thing I want to point out here is that the Zoning Board of Appeals can consider variances from the specific standards, okay? But they can't consider an appeal of the general standards. Again, that's in the state act. So an applicant who doesn't agree with the planning commission's determination of approval, or an applicant that doesn't agree with the planning commission's approval or determination of compatibility, can't appeal that to the zoning board of appeals. Okay, so again, you're the final decision-making body. And if an applicant doesn't agree with your determination of the general standards, then they have to appeal that outside of the city to the circuit court typically. So really, that's it. It's sort of a special group of uses that requires an extra level of scrutiny by the planning commission to make sure that this category of uses fits into a neighborhood, fits into a district, is compatible with the neighbors. And it gives you the tools to consider that. It also requires the public hearing, which is consistent, I know, with the City of Grosse Pointe Park's desire to make sure that the public is informed of what's happening and give them the opportunity to voice their thoughts on it. So with that, I wanted to keep it brief, but I'd absolutely be happy to answer any questions on this.
Thank
Mr.
you so
Jackson?
much, John. Oh, I was just going to thank John and then say if any of the commissioners have questions. So Commissioner Chesterton, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Jackson. How are you? Thank you.
Good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming tonight. Wondering in terms of precedent, in terms of transferring, or would it be redundant to copy the flow of approval path ultimately into the ordinance from the enabling legislation? In terms of the process, we of course have adopted sort of a unique methodology for how these approvals take place. I'm sure you're aware of that, and I'm wondering if you have any recommendations on that.
Well, for starters, having had the opportunity to work with your zoning ordinance, a little bit here with this project and a couple others, yes, there's definitely some modifications that we could recommend. I think having a clear path spelled out in your zoning ordinance absolutely makes sense.
Okay, great, thank you. And also I wanted to say welcome aboard. I know that you're going to, and it would definitely will need and appreciate your assistance. And I want to be really exponentially clear. This has nothing to do with the discussion this evening. I'm merely responding to general comments about some of the recommendations and what you outlined here. In addition to getting that process really clearly laid out, not just for SLUs, but also for approval processes in general, as well as getting intake meetings with developers so that they don't have to play a game of guess what I'm thinking. We want to be very friendly to folks that are willing to come and invest their time and money in the community. And I think getting informal meetings, and I'll take your guidance on that as well in terms of following proper process. I know other communities have navigated that well in terms of having informal intake meetings prior to any and all ideas, and most importantly, prior to soft costs being spent. Oh, you're on mute, John. There you are.
Okay, so I would wholeheartedly agree. I think it's consistent with the redevelopment ready, MEDC's redevelopment ready best practices, that applicants have the ability to come into a community, ask questions, get meaningful feedback early on in the process, as you mentioned, before they spend a lot of money. And just circling back on the question you asked me about the process, I think the most important thing is to have clearly defined roles and responsibilities of staff, of the administration, of your boards and commissions. What is the role of the planning commission? Sometimes planning commissions are primarily a recommending body to the city council. sometimes they have very clear decision-making authority. So when you think about the process of how a developer gets from point application or point meeting with the initially, is there a clear process, or somehow do you find yourself jumping to the end of the process before you can get back into the middle of the process? You know what I mean? Clearly defined roles and responsibilities. So step one, if you get approved, you go to step two. You know, that kind of process is important for developers so they understand.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioners that have questions for Mr. Jackson right now? I do not see anyone else raising their hand or asking a question. So City Manager Seisland, I will turn this back over to you. Thank you. Thanks again, John.
You're welcome.
And John will be back with us very shortly, but first I'll lay out the process that we're gonna go through tonight. We're gonna have with us George Bailey, who is the architect, and Mr. Rich Inger is the owner. And I believe Mr. Dave Bonjero, the construction, will be presenting to us tonight. Afterwards, John Jackson McKenna will present the detailed information they provide us. Then we'll open up the public hearing for comments from the public, and I do have several written public comments. We'll close that public hearing, and then the Planning Commission will deliberate. So with that said, Courtney, if you can assist me in giving Mr. George Bailey co-hosting capabilities so that he can present, and then Rich, George, or Dave, we'll turn it over to you.
There we go. Good evening, everybody. Am I coming through? Yes? Okay. Good evening. Well, my name is George Bailey. I am, like Mr. Seisland said, I'm the architect on the project. Been in front of this body a couple times. Glad to be back. You know, thank you to you guys, Chair Lindsay and Mayor Hodges and the rest of the crew. Thank you for the time this evening. I've got on my screen here, I'm hoping it's showing, this is Weyburn, this is the community, this is the block, this is where we want to be. The project is as you guys had in front of you, is a 4-unit townhouse development. We have gone through a couple of iterations that you guys have seen, and this latest one I think is moving us closer, we hope, and trying to get us to the finish line. You know, we're excited about being in this block. We're excited about being in Grosse Pointe Park. We're excited about you know, the possibility of adding to this neighborhood something special, something different, something unique, which I think Grosse Pointe Park has, and being able to be part of that I think is special. And I think we are ready to work. We have been ready to work. We're ready to kind of move this forward with you guys and getting this part completed. You know, I know we have to go through the steps and everything like that. And so just as a general statement, you know, we are again excited. The project may not look like, you know, our building may not look like the neighbor that's next to you, that's been next to you for a number of years, like the guy across the street. You know, just like we are, we don't look like our neighbors all the time, but you know, doesn't mean we're not going to be a good neighbor and that we're not going to be a very vital and bring vitality to the community. So with that, I'm going to switch over to, I want to do a couple of things. This is kind of where we were. So if you guys have seen this, this is our original proposal. 4 units facing Weyburn Street, front loaded garages. with access through the front and enabling the residents to have access, obviously entrance through stairs to the front, and then having private kind of backyard spaces for each unit. And so we felt like this scenario was our best foot forward initially, and we've received a lot of comments and a lot of I guess kind of criticism, for lack of a better term, about the way that we were oriented in the front loaded garages not being in keeping with the neighborhood and things like that, and just I guess the overall style was a little bit different than what was in the neighborhood. And this is where we were elevation wise, graphically. Again, we felt like, with we're being on the edge of Detroit, on the edge of that commercial aspect of right across Alter and Mac Street, or Mac Avenue, excuse me, and then still being a residential element, having that hybrid kind of aspect to our design kind of felt like the right way to go. Obviously, we've received our commentary. We received comments from this body, from the community, and we're trying to make strides to make this project fit better into the neighborhood. And so kind of reoriented ourselves. This is the current site plan. The landscaping elements are shown as kind of graphic right now. They're a work in progress. I know there was comments on the report about no specifics yet, but we're trying to get a handle and a feel of how our new design would be received, and then we will, the detail will definitely come. So we are side loaded garages here. We have a single drive lane coming in off of Weyburn. You can see the edge of the T turnaround, the emergency turnaround here on the right hand side of the page here. Utilizing a little bit of that buffer zone. We still lose that buffer zone to the street here with that T turnaround, but making the most of it here with a public sidewalk, landscaping, etc. The drawback on this design gets you a single garage without the ability to have a second parking spot immediately behind the garage door, or parking on the property itself. So it leaves us slightly deficient there, but feel like it still gives a good kind of it removes the front loaded garage, which was causing a lot of consternation on the previous design. Does give us, but like I said, landscape buffer zones on the front. Pushed there was comment about the being far forward, a little bit forward of the adjacent properties at 10 feet from the property line up front. The idea there is to try to get a little common green space at the back for the residents in the community there. That will, you could put swing sets, playground area, that kind of stuff for young families, things like that. We do have a taller fence line along the southern end here to give that buffer up against the neighbor. I know it's not the berm or landscape buffer that's in the ordinance, but it's something I feel like we feel like it gives that element of privacy up against the drive lane there, next to us as our right against our neighbor there. The other aspect here is private patios and deck areas at the second level that face onto that front onto Mac Avenue, giving the views out that direction. The elevation is a little bit different now. We are bringing in some of the more traditional elements, not exactly your triangle and square and lollipop sun kind of look, but it's an interpretation of the traditional design. We're bringing in the brick siding, the elements of the deck areas, things like that are commonplace in the area, in the residential neighborhood. Just again, we don't look like like your neighbor has over the years, but we want to explore a different way to kind of be a part of the community. Let's see. this aspect here, and I can show, I'll just flip around here. This is the side that faces Mack Avenue, shows the private patios back here. The deck area is at the second level. This is that backyard area here, common backyard space for everyone in the back, and then your drive lane, as you see here, with our side loaded garages on this side of the street, or excuse me, on this side of the property. So again, similar materials, we're just utilizing them in different ways, you know, brick, siding, natural wood, those kind of elements, trying to bring just a little bit of flair, a little bit of vitality to the end of the block. You know, that is a dead end block. And, you know, trying to spark it up, bring some life to it. And I don't know, I guess, Nick or John, is this, I mean, I have a list of the variances here that probably that we'd be looking at that were pointed out in the report, and I can speak to those. There are some that we definitely can see to that will be that there's no way for us to even manipulate or even try to overcome. The dwelling unit density issue, that just by sheer our lot size won't allow for that, and same response for the general lot size itself for the multifamily use. Definitely concede those. Those are, we just you know, we need some help there and want to work and try to get this project in. As I mentioned before, the parking, you know, with this orientation doesn't allow for you know, parking, an additional parking on the property itself. Not to say that the street parking, you know, is every time I pass through that street, I know everybody's parking on the street as well. So that certainly that can be utilized for the residents as they come in. The other major, I guess, the other key points that were talked about in the report, setbacks. My setbacks were not labeled incorrectly. They were labeled according to the, I guess I think it was, oh, I forget the number. It's like the note P that was underneath the requirements that allowed for, it's just where I got 7.5 feet was the 60 wide. You can have up to 1 foot for every 60 feet plus a 1.5 feet for every additional 10 feet after that. So that gets me to 7.5. That was on my previous submittal. It's on this one because it's my building is nowhere near that. On this southern side here, on this side here. We do, I guess, technically legally have our zero setback line on the north side. And I guess this is where, I guess, John and Terry, just, I know we're approved for zero lot line, doesn't necessarily mean we have to park our building at the zero lot line, is my assumption. So if we wanted to pull back, we can. That's what we were trying to do there, just to give a little bit of buffer zone back at the northern side here up against that retention pond. The landscaping, like I said, I'm showing it in our site plan view. Our landscaping is in progress. It is there. Just, you know, like I said, we're trying to get a feel for where we're going to be going with this process, and hopefully that we will be moving towards approval. And so those labels and those specifics will definitely come. The other major one was the height. Let's see if I've got my elevations here. The way that I read the height restriction was based on my label on my drawing here is showing the total height to the peak, which is at that 35-foot mark. But according to the zoning ordinance, and going back and looking at that, our mid-slope height is where we're supposed to be measuring. And if I'm wrong on that, John, let me know. So that we still are a little bit out of scale on that one. We're at about 32 feet to the mid-slope. So we're a little bit out of scale by a couple of feet based on the commentary about the 30-foot mark in the comments. So again, we need conceding that, and we need a little bit of help with that. And then I guess the overarching kind of commentary in the report is regarding aesthetics. Just again, trying to have a little bit of spin on the traditional elements, bringing in the materials, using the same materials that are in the neighborhood, just trying to put a little bit of different spin to it, having gable elements, a little bit offset, a little bit different look to it. trying to be, appeal to maybe some younger demographic, folks that like something different, the person that's going to probably look into these properties is wanting wanting a change from the traditional, potentially having the benefits of being in an older community or an established community, but having something new, something fresh, is kind of where we're sitting right now. I'm gonna bring up the last image there, and that's kind of the view from the street. We're turning the building sideways, kind of trying to put one of the end unit, put the front door still communicating with the street. Gable elements facing that way, like again, using the traditional kind of signals from the traditional design elements. And all of these things that we talked about, the ones other than the ones that we need that we can see to on the especially on the lot size, dwelling unit size, and the parking, the height, the setbacks, the landscaping, and even the aesthetics. If we're willing to work, we're willing to go the distance to kind of get this project rolling and get our foothold in the community and be a part of this wonderful community that I'm doing. So.
Thank you, George. Chair Lindsay or commissioner members, any comments for George or his group?
I was talking fast, so my apologies.
I see Commissioner Chesterton, you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Sorry, if anybody, I know I tend to go first, so I don't want to take the air out of anyone's sails. Actually, City Manager Seisland, forgive me if I should know this, but this is a question directed to you. Has the city confirmed that safe turnaround will be accessible for fire trucks at the newly created cul-de-sac by the abandonment of that street?
Yeah, so as part of our site plan review, when we worked on this with the DPW and Stuckey Vitale, who was the architect, and Ron Selly, they did do some engineering designs with their engineer, Stonefield Engineering, that could look at a fire truck that would be able to utilize that T turnaround that would go to the end of the street and back up, back out, and go back down Wayburn. So to answer your question, yes.
Okay, and that's all trucks in our fleet can do a 50-foot turnaround there.
The largest fire truck, yes, that we have in our fleet can make that turnaround.
Okay,
it's
great.
tight, but they can do it.
Okay, great, thanks. Mr. Bailey, thank you again for presenting. I have a whole bunch of questions, but I think in order to make this productive, I appreciate Mr. Jackson's write-up, and I think that he signaled many variances that will be required in order to approve this. Rather than getting in the weeds on each variance one by one, I just have some general questions. And this goes back to again, I'm going to start with thank you. We heard you about your willingness to invest in the community. And we do need some diversity of product. Since you came to us earlier in the year, I see that you modified the footprint, but did you modify the floor plans in any way to respond to this?
Yes, the floor plans actually increased in size slightly.
What I'm mostly curious about was the resistance to put the pedestrian activity, the front doors at the front, and the garage and automobile entrance to the rear. I understand re-engineering, and that's not the product you want to bring to this project. But I'm wondering, I'm wondering if you could tell me a little bit more why both the car and the pedestrian entrance need to happen in the simultaneous facade.
Well, the owner could probably speak to it more a little bit, but as far as the product itself, he The directive is that we want to put 4 units on this property. And I don't know if you were able to come out to the site where we met out at the site and kind of lined everything out. We spray painted the ground and kind of showed where if we turned everything to the back and put garages in the rear, the footprints would be narrower, but
Right.
the drive lane itself would be only about 9 feet wide, not double loaded. You would be going off into an abyss in the back, and then asking about, just to the point about what you asked about the turnaround for the trucks and things. We would have to be literally at the front, like the building itself would have to sit at the property line at the front in order to make enough room for vehicles to get in and out of the back, to back out of a garage, and then have enough turn radius and turnaround space at the back of the property to be able to then come back down the single lane driveway and get back out onto Wayland. The other
And that-
aspect is kind of a
and
quality
sorry,
of
just-
life thing.
Mr. Bay, I just want to interject so you don't have to keep going on this point. That was maintaining the existing widths that you're presenting here of the
This-
units,
That was the previous width.
which was what?
Previous widths were right around
15?
They were right around 15, a little bit under. Slightly. They were probably about 14.5, 14.6,
Mhm.
somewhere around there, almost 15. 15 probably to the center line of the wall. So in my fire loader.
So less, yeah, with materials,
Yeah.
right? Okay.
And then that
Um,
leaves you no room in the back for any kind of fun deck area, backyard area, that kind of stuff. So
But did you put that to paper, or that's just through early early noodling?
no, I did. That was one of the initial studies that didn't make it out of the initial phases because it just wasn't tenable. The drive lane itself would be you'd be right up against. You'd have to have a curb right on the building line itself, and then a curb right at the property line, a fence sitting right on top of that, and then driving down this narrow strip with a fence on one side and a larger building on your right. It just seems it's not
So-
comfortable,
and so you're-
not a sellable scenario, I don't think, as far
So
as the product.
The
itself.
narrow driveway was the resistant, what's the difference between the driveway you're proposing now and the driveway that would have been in that scenario?
Well, the difference is that you're only going to the end of the building and to the side. You're making one turn back in and out. Going all the way around to the end of into the back end of the property, you would have to, like I said, you need to be at least 30 feet deep from the building line to the back of the property.
No,
up
Mr. I'm
concrete.
sorry, I don't want to make you go through this. I'm just wondering, what is the difference between the scenario you had proposed? You'd mentioned that driveway would be really narrow in that scenario versus the driveway that you're proposing in this one tonight.
Well,
So you got
because-
10
well-
feet versus 9 feet?
well, we're 12 feet wide, 10 feet wide down here in the middle, but the biggest difference is that you're building in that scenario, the scenario we were talking about, having a rear loaded garage, your building would be right here where this curb is, or closer. And so the building itself is pushed back from there at least 10, 12 feet at points. So the building itself would be where this curb line is here in order to make it work to get and then we'd be at the 0 lot line on the north. Building would come to here.
Which you're
You know,
permitted
then
to do.
you lose any kind of landscaping opportunities, outdoor living opportunities, those kinds of things. So quality of life wouldn't be, and then, like I said, you'd be up at the front end of the property, which I don't think anybody in this body wants us to be right at the front of the property either. So
Okay, all right.
Well,
Well,
excuse me for 1 second. This is Rich. I'm with GSR. I'm one of the developers. Hello,
hi there.
everyone.
Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, no problem. So just to kind of add on to George's comments, it really comes down to, on top of what he said, which I 100% agree with, it's a functionality point. Like, I understand the rear loaded garage is what everyone wants, and if I could do it, I would. But from a functional standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. If you would have been out there when we spray paint and laid everything out, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago or something. I mean, we kind of walked through it, and there's clearly a hardship on having rear loaded garages in the back of the building. On top of what he said, it's also a functionality problem. What happens is you'll have, this is one example of many, but you'll have a car, let's say the lot closest to Mac, you have a car backing out of the garage in the back, coming around the turn, not knowing what's coming. And then you have another car coming up to park in unit, one of the middle units or a unit closer to the opposite side of Mac. And you have one car that at that point, either they crash, number one, or number two, you have one car backing out all the way into the street. You have, or backing up into the garage. It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't work. I mean, listen, I would love to put them in the back if the alley was functioning, or if we could feasibly do it. I mean, if you drop down to a couple different units and you just do 2 units instead of 4, like there's ways to do it, but it doesn't work for us. Like the front loaded was the best for us. We thought it made sense. But the comments were, let's try to maybe do something different. So that this is where we're at now, but in the rear, they just don't work. I mean,
They don't work
really
with this architectural layout.
they don't, with 4 units, they don't
With 4
work.
units. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
they don't work. And we've been clear about that from day one. We looked at it a lot of different ways. And then when we laid it out, like I said, some people were there. I know John was there, Nick was there. It just doesn't work with 4 units. And, I was very clear about that from the beginning.
So I'm going to, I think a lot, there's with the amount of variances, I'll let the rest of the commissioners ask questions. I just have, what is your total percentage of impervious space?
In the front yard?
Total for the project?
I don't have that calculated right now. I thought the
Okay.
number was for the front yard. The front yard is only 17%.
Okay.
And I will say, I mean, as I'm sure you're aware, it's very common that request multiple variances when you're doing a development. It's not uncommon to have several different variances that you need to do a development. I don't know the exact number, the average number, but it's not uncommon to have them. I mean, I've seen them 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different variances. So I think some of them, John had a good report. I think some of them we can work with, as George alluded to. But there's a few that will never work. And this is just a conversation. And if we're going to be stuck on a couple of them that we just can't get off of, then we all have to move in a different direction. And and I respect everyone's decision on that and comment and debate. But at the same time, we're not going to want to spend any more time on it.
Commissioner Chesterton, if you are done with your questions, I just want to see if any of the other commissioners
Yeah,
have questions.
let's give other people an opportunity to
A
talk.
chance to ask some questions. If anybody wants to either raise their hand, then we can. Okay. I do have a question for Mr. Bailey. In terms of, and I don't want to dive too deep into the variances right now. Although I do have the same question as Commissioner Chesterton about what the overall percentage of impervious lot coverage you have on here. As you well know, we have a a challenging situation in the park with our stormwater management. So the more concrete that I see, the more I have flashbacks of the June 25th flood in my basement. So I know that that is a huge concern. So we do need to have that percentage in front of us. And my question to you, and I understand your thought process on reorienting the units. So the side faces Weyburn, but coming in and looking at this and keeping in context of what the neighborhood is, and it is at the now the end of what will be a dead end street. Did it cross your mind that you are putting the back of these properties towards our neighbors to Detroit?
It did. The consideration, yeah, the consideration was there that we were either in either scenario, I mean, whether we were front facing or this orientation currently, we'd be facing Detroit. But I mean, in getting in order to get what my client's needs are, and trying to service those needs and make sure that I'm delivering the best product. I mean, this, and trying to get it through this process, trying to get hit as many of the boxes as I can as far as the ordinance goes and things like that. I mean, Mack Avenue, hopefully, keeps coming. They keep saying Detroit's coming back. So I mean, why not face there and be the first ones to see it when it does? So I mean,
And I take that, but to that point, this development, as with the site plan that you're preventing, the back of the unit is what's facing Mack Avenue and Detroit. So as we look towards working with our neighbors in Detroit and looking at developing commercial properties on both sides of Mack Avenue, it's not a welcoming facade that we want to have facing Detroit.
I would respectfully disagree. I mean, it's actually the place where people can go and they can sit outside and enjoy the view, enjoy the sunset, enjoy the sunrise, or from whichever directions it's coming, and they can, and it doesn't preclude us from eventually, I know that's a retention pond, but maybe adding paving back there and adding gates to get to the public way from that side as well. I mean, there's right now it wouldn't be it, but I mean, there's ways of embracing the community, and I think that this is, on one hand it's private, but at the same time you're also looking to your neighbor on that side. And then from the flip side of things, on the southern end, we're nobody wanted to see a front garage, so we're turned the other way, and I get that part of it, and that's where I'm trying to get in, at least that front door, the front unit kind of acts as the main front door for the building, is kind of what I was after there, to kind of embrace and look towards the neighbors on Weyburn, right? Since I had 4 doors previously that where people could come out and embrace their neighbors initially, but that wasn't flying. So I'm just trying to, like I said, I mean, you can embrace the community however, and I think that's where, you find the right client for this property, or the right buyer or tenant for this property, and they're going to be someone that wants something different, that wants to be part of this and have the elements of the traditional neighborhood, and still have access to Mack Avenue, to the different aspects, and the good, bad, the ugly that is Detroit. I mean, that they are our neighbor. So I mean, I think we can get the best of both worlds out of that, and it can evolve to that, to your point about, when things change and when things get better, and it's more walkable and those kinds of things in that particular area. So I think it definitely could evolve. So
I would like to add to that as well. So basically, what your opinion is that our neighbors in Detroit, the commercial neighbors in Detroit, would not want to look at in our opinion, a beautiful building with balconies and activity in a commercial area. From their standpoint, they would rather look at the side of a building and with nothing going on. I mean, I guess I just don't understand that. Like, to me, I think they would actually welcome that more than just looking at the side of a building with nothing happening, especially in a commercial area like Mack Avenue. Again, that's just my opinion, but I think actually that adds to the entire design from that standpoint, from what you're discussing and what you're commenting on. Like, I don't know, if I own a commercial business, or if I have, a restaurant or whatever I have going on in Mac in the commercial district, I would love to see that. I'd love to see balconies. I would love to see people, hanging out. I'd love to see that, as opposed to the side of a building. I mean, again, I think it might be a difference of an opinion, but I think it would be great.
Okay, I certainly appreciate that. And to that point, I think the neighbors on Weyburn perhaps would rather see activity in the front versus the side of a building as well. So that,
Yeah,
those
and
are
our initial design, if you guys remember, our initial design was garages in the front, entries in the front, balconies in the back. That was our initial pitch. That's what we initially wanted.
Yep.
And which was welcomed at one meeting. Commissioner Goodwin, thought we made enough changes to continue to move forward. And then for whatever reason, we took several steps back. So here we are with a new design, which we're good with, which we like, which we know needs to change a little bit here and there. And we're willing to work with everyone on that. But that's why we're pitching it this way. Because the rear loaded garages don't work. The front loaded garage, we didn't think were welcome for them, after all the comments and remarks that we got. So here we are today with a different design.
excellent. Well, thank you. And I do appreciate that you guys have tried to engineer and redesign and create something that would fit into the vision that you have. So I appreciate that. Those are the only comments that I have. So if there are any other commissioners that have comments or questions at this point.
Commissioner Vitaki, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So what I heard is a couple times is that there's certain of the potential variances that the developers can work with, and others that are sound like it would turn it into a non-starter. And I think just in terms of framing the discussion later, after we hear the public comments, if I could just make sure we understand which are which. So is it fair to say that when I look at some of the things noted in John's report, there were some issues around the footprint relative to the lot size? And if I heard correctly, that's something that is probably not changeable. Is it fair to say that?
As far as I'm concerned, yeah. I mean, John could probably, I don't know if John can weigh in on that. I would say so. I think it's a function of lot size.
Okay. Number of units, it's got to be 4 units or there's no flexibility on the number of units, correct?
I can speak to that. Not with this footprint, no. And there's a multitude of reasons of why that we don't really need to get into, because I know there's a lot that needs to still be discussed. But if additional land was acquired, there would be different opportunities. But with what we got here, the amount of money that's being invested, there's a lot of different factors. So you clearly can't go more than 4. Everyone's struggling with 4 now. We do these all the time on 4 units on similar size lots. But yeah, there's no way it makes sense to do less than 4 on this footprint.
Got it. Okay, fair enough. And then the parking setup with the one spot per unit positioned where it is, that's not changeable as far as I can tell. Is that an accurate statement?
I mean, the one option which I've done before on a different project is a tandem garage. We could probably, then we'd lose storage space on that main level, but there would be room to do potentially do a tandem parking setup inside the building, but I don't know if
Yeah.
that's
Okay,
ideal or
yeah,
not.
I'm not advocating for one or the other. I'm just trying to understand what are the issues that we don't have any flexibility on versus the ones that we have flexibility on from your perspective. So
100%.
so, and then the impervious surface issue. Do you have flexibility on that in terms of the amount of concrete, especially in that northern area with the driveway?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a function of economics. I think we could work with, different materials. We're talking about doing, permeable bricks, brick paving back in the back here. I'm sure we could look at something in the original proposal. We were looking at, doing something similar up front. So certainly those kind of things those are design elements. Like I said before, I think design elements were 100% willing to kind of, go back and forth and work a little bit, try to figure out what the best solution is going to be in order for us to move forward. So short answer,
Okay.
yes.
And the height, I think you signaled that you were willing to lower the height a bit.
Well, I don't know if I can. I mean, that's a tough one because right now I've got the livable spaces. I've got 8-foot ceilings on the sleeping level, and I've got 9-foot ceilings on the main level, on the living level. And then an 8-foot ceiling in the garage. So I don't think I could go I don't think I want to go 8 feet on a living space of this, especially being so narrow. That, like I said, after looking at, the specifics on the height and what the requirements are, we're slightly out of range at a little bit over 2 feet from that mid slope. So, and that's on either slope, it's right at the same point roughly. So yeah, that'd be a tough one. That'd be hard.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
I say doable, but I don't know if it makes sense.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, that's all I had for the moment. So I'll let others chime in.
Yeah, the only other thing I'll add to that, obviously with the architectural look, there was a comment on that. We would be more than happy to, make the changes necessary on if everyone wants a different look. I mean, we might not be able to satisfy everybody, but we can definitely work on that. If that's, I mean, obviously we have more than one sticking point, but that's something that we can work together on for sure. Because that's, I mean, all this stuff's important, but that's something that we definitely can look at again. Impervious, we can definitely do everything possible to improve that. We're definitely open for that. And then as far as the parking goes, with the way that's set up now with the design, there's no way to get any more parking than what we have laid out. With the front loaded garages, obviously there was additional spaces there, but not with this design.
Any comments from any other commissioner members? Seeing none, John and Rich, George and Rich, thank you guys so much for your discussion tonight. I'm sure we'll get back to you later, and we're going to move on now to Mr. John Jackson's review for the commission. So I want to thank you both.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And then next, John's going to be pulling up his review for us.
Thank you. So everyone should have received our review letter. And I just want to talk about the process, which is something that came up earlier tonight. So the first question that the Planning Commission should be looking at is as a use that requires special condition approval, does it fit the neighborhood? Does it fit the character of the community? Does it meet those general standards that we had talked about earlier? And so I think that's really what the Planning Commission should be talking about tonight. Let me give you an example. Without getting into the variance details, because that's for another day. But one of the big things is 4 units going to fit on this property or not, right? And they've proposed a footprint with 4 townhouses with individual entrances, individual garages, and so forth. But in the city of Grosse Pointe Park, it wouldn't be hard to imagine two flats on these 2 lots, right? That's sort of the vernacular of Grosse Pointe Park. That concept exists on this block. So it's not hard to imagine getting 4 units on this property. So this is where the questions about, is it compatible? Is this approach to getting 4 units on this piece of property compatible with the character of the neighborhood, the fabric, the intent of the ordinance, the intent of the master plan? Those are the questions that you should really focus on. I understand that there are several variances that are required. So you might be asking yourself, with this many variances, isn't it by nature not compatible? But again, that's for someone else to consider. Your consideration here with this special land use is, is there a way for it to fit on this property? So I think that's what you need to be focusing on. And you can see the litany of variances we've identified. Our recommendation at this point in time is that you discuss it and table it and give the applicant direction on which way they want to go and which way you want them to go. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no question. Oh, seeing no questions. It looks like we do have one from the architect, George.
Well, I was kind of just curious. The word litany of variances kind of is a curious term, but after we're willing to work and kind of figure that part out. But I mean, as far as I'm just having trouble with kind of just trying to figure out where, if I guess this process, we're solely looking at the special land use sort of request at this point, correct?
So there's well,
John, we had you frozen. We didn't hear. Yeah.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So
I still didn't hear the answer. I'm sorry.
Sorry about that. A little technical snafu. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm sorry, you're right. That term litany was probably not a correct term. There are variances that are required for this project, some of which, as I mentioned before, I think are probably surmountable and justifiable if the character of the resulting project is consistent and meets the test and the standards of the special land use approval. But as I also mentioned before, just because the planning commission, if they do determine that this project is consistent and meets the standards of the special land use, they would still have to make a motion that it's subject to receiving the variances from the Zoning Board of Appeal. Then the next step in the process is the planning commission would review and consider the site plan. And they would say, okay, we think that there has been adequate attention given to the impervious surface. We believe the setbacks all are appropriate. We believe the building height, if it's not perfect, is consistent and compatible. And then they would make a motion on the site plan, again, subject to receiving the variances. So the first determination that the planning commission has to make is looking at what you've presented tonight. A building that has the side of the building facing the street with no activity going on, is that consistent and compatible with a street that has everyone's front door located on it where they walk out to the sidewalk up and down the street? So those are the tests that they're going to have to consider in making a determination whether or not the special use is appropriate or not. That's step one. And then step two is the site plan. And then the further it gets in the process, the more it gets, you drill down.
They also have to consider the hammerhead that's right out in front of our property and the location of our lot as well. Not all about looking at the side of the building. I mean, our initial proposal was front loaded garages with entries in front. But we have a unique lot to say for a multitude of reasons. And we're okay with that. We'll work as hard as we can to satisfy as many people as we can to get something done here. But they definitely have to take in consideration the situation with the hammerhead and DPW and the location that we're in as well. I think that's very fair to say.
And just for clarity though, I understand everything that you said. I understand the process, but somewhat, since it's to Commissioner Chesterton's initial comments after you did the training session. We started out in good faith with the previous building official that was giving us, we had that intake meeting with him, and he gave us direction, and we were headed that direction, and we seemed to be on the path according to someone in the know at the city. And so, I know crying over spilled milk sort of thing, whatever, but I'm hoping that there's a little bit of credit there to kind of give us a little bit of leeway here, because it sounds like we're going to get pushed all the way till February, and that's right on the cusp of the start of building season when the ground's starting to thaw out and things like that. So is there a way for us to get to a point at this meeting where if it's the site plan approval and special land use together, I understand they're tied together, is there a way, if it's going to be a nay all the way across the board, then that's one thing. But if there's some consideration about approval with certain considerations and certain conditions, can that happen, and can that happen administratively, and not have to come back to the body again and wait till February until, when we're, potentially having to have a meeting that we get denied one more time sort of thing. We've been working on this with the city for over a year in good faith, and again with someone in the know. I know he's no longer with the city, but the initial conversations were with someone at the city. We didn't go in blind necessarily, but so just hoping that from this point, I know I've already had my time, but I'm hoping that there's some sort of point. We feel like a little bit of a guinea pig going through. I know there's changes happening with your systems and the processes, and I understand that completely. I'm on the planning commission here in the woods, and I understand all the ramifications and everything that goes with it and everything like that. But I'm hoping that that we could get to a point where if it's conditional approval, then we can maybe handle it in an administrative pathway so that we can hopefully move forward to satisfy this body's requirements. So.
I've got my hand up. I'm going to go ahead and jump in, Chair Lindsay, if that's okay. I don't want to be out of order because I know we had concluded our questions.
Nope, that's fine.
Is that okay? All right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to respond to the comment about this being a very bizarre piece of property, which I agree with. Again, unfortunately, this is the cautionary tale about closing streets, closing alleys, and shutting streets down. So you can't have it both ways. We can't have a traditional look with a typical street network that we've sort of created for ourselves. I'm wondering, I understand that when that alley was vacated, the lot was then rendered to private property. Is that the case? Or is there any course of correction on, go ahead, City Manager Seisland.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Chesterton. Yeah, behind their proposed development, that is now owned by the city of Detroit.
Okay, as private property or as a right of way?
I would have to get back to you on that one.
Okay.
But I know, yeah.
I'm just wondering and again, to the development team, I wanted to acknowledge the unique challenges of the site. I just wanted to know if you had sought out, I believe that there's the piece of property directly behind that's for sale. If you had done a little out of the box thinking in terms of acquiring any additional property to be able to access the site in a more traditional way.
Yeah, I can speak on that. So I have had multiple conversations with the landowner. I can buy it at any time. I discussed this with John on site. He was asking questions about it, but with the easements in place, the right of way, this Grosse Pointe Park not owning the alley anymore, it doesn't. That was my initial thought. Obviously, if Grosse Pointe Park owned the alley, I don't even think we would be discussing.
We wouldn't be having this conversation.
No,
and you would be proposing 4 units, and it would be great. And you would access them at the rear.
Yeah. So outside, but we looked at. We do a lot of different developments in Detroit, and we looked at that. The land bank owns a cross altar right there. They own 2 lots down across from that private owner that we've looked at, that we can acquire. But for this specific development, we didn't see a way to where acquiring that land made any sense.
It doesn't pencil. Understood. Thank you. That's all I wanted to ask.
Mr. Chesterton, looking at the parcel viewer, it looks like that city of Detroit alleyway.
So traditionally, when alleys are vacated, the adjacent property owners get right of first refusal and it's split down the middle. Did that not happen in this case? For some reason, they took the whole alley?
I was just looking on the Wayne County GIS, their parcel viewer. It almost looks as if the entirety, but that's something I have to get further clarification.
Okay, yeah, and that's something that's in the past.
Yeah, and we'll dig into that too. Our attorneys will dig into that as far as because Detroit does own all of that, obviously with the utility easement in the middle, roughly. We were never given the option to acquire it, but we're going to dig into that as well. So thanks for pointing that out.
If there's no further comment, Chair Lindsay, I can go ahead opening the public hearing and reading out comments from interested residents and those that would like to speak.
Yes, I think that would be the appropriate time to do that. Thank you, City Manager.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again, George and Rich. So this first comment comes from Lawrence Reno, who's on 1463 Wayburn. I'm writing you in regards to several concerns I have with the proposed development on the 1400 block of Wayburn. The first concern about this development, one of the main, is parking. As it is now, the street is overcrowded and there's no room for the residents there now. The aesthetic of this building fits nothing in the area now. Its design is such that the tenant's outdoor living space is not cohesive to the intermingling of neighbors and would seem to separate them. It appears that the only change from the initial plan is that it was rotated 90 degrees clockwise. A more recent concern stems from the June 26 floods. Runoff of rain has not been addressed with regards to the concrete driveway and the building footprint. The only storm drain on that section at Wayburn is at Goethe and Wayburn. Lastly, when GPP acquired the 2-family flats, it was under the guise of reducing population density in the area. This appears to be an equal trade of residential space without reduction. Feel free to contact me with any questions. This comment comes from Mr. Michael Defoe. We are looking forward to this new build across the street from our 1474-76 Wayburn duplex. I'm sure some of our questions may be answered during the Zoom meeting tonight, but they are as follows. How will parking work for the new units? Street parking is currently congested. What is the timeline for start date and completion? Will these units be for sale, for individual ownership, or for rentals only? Who is the builder? This question comes from Jean Segonia. The addition of 4 condos, each with 1 garage, will pose undue hardship as we are already facing parking difficulties on Wayburn. Currently, there are 3 homes without any driveways, and we have over 8 residents already forced to park in the street. Great difficulties with any visitor's ability to park. We already have had 4 cars hit in the street. There is no turnaround access for police, fire, ambulances, special education buses. We currently have one, a longtime resident requiring one, and snow trucks. These new condo sales will be very restricted to people with only 1 car for 2-bedroom condos, with most buyers probably owning 2 vehicles and no on-street parking, to say nothing of the noise issues possibly resulting from activity at the new Public Works building. Would you buy one? I'm a 16-year senior citizen resident renter who plans on staying here until I die, who maintains my property, follow all the rules, and considerate of my neighbors and reside at 1469 Wayburn. This comment comes from Robert Bunn at 1463 Wayburn. The design of the new building is not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The existing parking is not adequate for the current residents, let alone 4 additional units. There is no turnaround at the end of the dead-end street, and as a result, several residents' cars have been hit by people backing up to Goethe. The addition of 4 units on 2 lots is not compatible with the goal of reducing multi-unit dwellings. There has been no improvement in storm and sewer drainage, so 4 additional will put a greater strain on the system. This plan seems more of I want it, so make it happen than a well-thought-out program. This comment comes from Mr. John Michaels. After reviewing the building plans for 1475-82 Wayburn, I strongly object to this proposal. The architectural plan shows a building that is not in key with the existing homes surrounding it. Number 2, it is too big a structure considering that the city is going to take over the whole Altermac corner. With the building of the Grosse Pointe Depot, we will already lost a number of precious parking spaces in this already congested area. Number 3, 4 units will mean a potential of not just 4 cars, but 8 cars added to our already congested street. Number 4, there are already a number of units that do not have driveways, including my 2 unit. With the building of this 4 unit, it will mean less space for parking. Chair Lindsay, those are my written public comments, and I'm going to see if there's any spoken public comment from the public. If there's anyone in the public who'd like to speak, please raise your hand. Chair Lindsay, seeing none, we can move to close the public hearing.
Yes, thank you, City Manager Seislin. I think we can close the public hearing, and that would leave us to move to comments from each of the commissioners. So what I would like to do is just go through the roll and let everyone have the opportunity to speak. So we'll start with Commissioner Chesterton.
Haven't heard enough from me tonight. Well, again, I wanted to acknowledge the efforts that have been taken so far. I wanted to acknowledge the challenging site due to various road closures. I do think that this type of diversity in the neighborhood is needed. I do want to make a really very clear point about may not be like the others. I am a strong proponent of modern design, but that modern design needs to follow certain basic characteristics with pedestrian activity at the street, as well as a certain amount of opacity and window openings. There's a myriad of ways that different designs can be achieved while still striving for the same form. And that form really needs to be built on the foundation of pedestrian-oriented streets and walkability, which I don't see in the presentation this evening. I also have concerns, again, about the lack of the amount of impervious space. We're not in the weeds or the details for the civil drawings, but trying to understand how this will be drained. The driveway space would need to be drained in a way as to drain away from the neighbors, which would require significant trench drains at the garage openings. I'm unclear about how trash and other loading would take place in the area. But again, based on costs, escalation of costs, goods, service, delivery times, and labor at this point, I definitely understand the desire to render 4 units out of this property. Those are my general comments, and what I'm seeing tonight still does not seem to be deserving of these walkable streets and the neighborhood that we would like to continue to promote.
Thank you, Commissioner Chesterton. Commissioner Coletta, do you have
Thank
any
you.
comments to share?
Thank you. And there are individuals on this commission who are a lot more sophisticated in some of these areas involving planning and suitable land use and all of that than I am. And I'm not going to pretend to be sophisticated in all of those areas. But what I see primarily is that looking at this in a vacuum, I think it architecturally looks nice. And I think that they would be desirable places to live. I think that they would work well in certain places in the right lots, and in a vacuum, it's all great. But I don't know whether it works on this particular lot, and I don't know whether it works within the neighborhood on Weyburn. I know certainly if I were the immediate next door neighbor, I wouldn't be pleased with 4 garages and 4 entrances facing the side of my home. So the question is whether it can be made to work on the lot. And a lot of the issues with the lot, I think, were known at the time that the building was initially proposed. So those are my concerns, and right now I just don't know whether it works. But I'm certainly interested in seeing whatever modifications are made and seeing what the developers are willing to do in terms of working with the commission, working with the city. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Commissioner Coletta. Commissioner Evans, any comments you'd like to share?
Yes, thank you. I agree. Additional, residential capacity is needed. I too appreciate the aesthetic diversity that the project brings to the area. I think that's important. I think it's valuable. It is a challenging site for sure. And I think that, in listening to the public comments and looking at the design, the parking issue is not trivial. I share the concerns with that for the existing residents and some of the challenges that brings. And that may be a consequence of the of growth with the current layout and some of the issues with the street closures. However, with all of the needed variances and all the different issues, I talking about having more discussions, further discussions about the details of that and finding resolutions to it, I think is probably the most important element of allowing this project to have the best opportunity to move forward. I do think it's a positive step in that direction. So I'm looking forward to those conversations.
Thank you, Commissioner Evans. I'm going to skip to, I believe, we'll go right to Commissioner Bataki. We'll come back to you since Commissioner Samper is not on the call.
Okay, I guess my comments echo a lot of the ones that we've just heard. I appreciate all the work that the developers have put into it, and I'm sympathetic to the fact that the economics are such that it has to be a certain size and a certain number of units. But to me, when I look at it, it just seems to be a building that's kind of too big for the lot. And the variances that would be required in terms of the footprint versus the lot size and the amount of parking and things like that just kind of affect the compatibility and the character issue relative to the rest of the neighborhood. So, back in the spring when this first came up, I remember going down to that block, and it's a very dense block already. I think I counted 42 different units. There were multiple multifamily units already there. As some of the public commenters have said, there's a lot of parking currently going on in the street. And I think that's going to be a big issue. So I think in that respect, I'm kind of on the same page with some of the others commissioners' comments at this point. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Bataki. Mayor Hodges, do you have any comments?
Thank you, Chair Lindsay. Just briefly, wanting to acknowledge the developer again for the team's tenacity and their commitment to the park and the effort that they've made to date. And I won't be redundant regarding my comments that have already been stated tonight. But so for me, it boils down to looking at the totality of the discussion tonight. And there clearly are a number of unresolved issues that have been brought to the table really by all parties, whether it's the administrative team or the public that's here tonight or my fellow commissioners. And we all have a duty to make sure that those are effectively addressed. And so it feels to me as if this project is still in too nascent of a stage to warrant further consideration until we work to get a little closer on some of those issues. And I would be hopeful that that can be accomplished, that we can achieve the favorable aspects of this, which is to add some diversity and to add to the tax base and the like. So my hope would be that we can make that effort between now and our next meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Hodges. I'll just briefly echo those same comments that my fellow commissioners have already stated. First, George and Rich, we appreciate your investment in the community and in the park and your desire to be a part of that. But I do feel that we have some challenges here, in particular with parking. I like Commissioner Bataki, I've been to the site on a few different occasions. So creating more congestion creates more problems for the existing residents. The orientation of those units, do not lend to that pedestrian and walkable block that we have there currently. So I'm hopeful that we can work together. I know that you are eager and anxious to make steps and move forward. So let's see if we can find some resolution to some of these issues and hopefully be partners moving forward. So with that, City Manager Seisland, I believe at this point we can entertain a motion from the commission. If the commission would like to either vote to approve the project with a special land use, or we can move to table this project and the vote on the special land use and give the developer the opportunity to address some of those issues that have been brought up tonight. So if anyone would like to make
I would like to make a
motion.
motion to table the proposed development.
Okay, we
Second.
have a motion from Commissioner Chesterton, and I believe seconded by Mayor
Myself.
Hodges. To say,
Yes.
is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And with that, are there any questions? If not, City Manager Seisland, would you please call the roll?
Chair Lindsay, I believe Mr. Bailey had a question before the vote. Am I out of order if I ask a question after the
No,
motion?
that is
Okay.
okay. Sometimes
Um,
it's hard to see. It's hard to see on Zoom, but yes,
Yeah, I just
definitely.
want to understand
Mr.
this.
Ba-
I just want to ask a quick question in terms of process for
Yes.
for tabling, in terms of Mr. Bailey and his client, I'm sure, do not want to go around the mill again on soft costs and effort. And I am wondering, this is probably a question more to Mr. Jackson, in terms of a process for an open discussion, in terms of sitting around the table to see what other tools that we have. One last time, I don't want them to go off again and play this game of guess what we're thinking. We understand the constraints. So I'm just, I'm wondering what would be an appropriate course of meetings, being mindful of Open Meetings Act, et cetera, so that we could continue to engage, so they don't have to go away, so that we could get one last ditch effort to have an open conversation about a path forward.
So I think it's perfectly appropriate to have a meeting with the developer and the administration and invite selected planning commission member or two to attend. To your point, as long as there's not a quorum of planning commission members at that meeting, I think that would be a helpful interaction with the applicant.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John. And George, I see that you do have your hand up if you'd like to.
I was just
ask
kind
a
of,
question.
I didn't want to get tabled into oblivion. That's all, that was my concern. So thank you, Commissioner Chesterton. I was trying to get that clarity where, you know, if we're just getting tabled and we have to kind of throw darts at the dartboard again, it doesn't make sense. But if we're able to kind of get some, you know, get a little bit of, you know, trace paper or something like that, whatever we want to do to kind of get in front of it again and try to figure it out. So.
Absolutely. And we don't want to leave you hanging, George. So I think we all, you know, as professionals understand that this is, you know, you don't want to belabor this, but with the intent of voting to table this and not vote tonight, I think it gives you the opportunity and to set up that meeting with city manager and with Mr. Jackson, hopefully with Terry Brennan, and then we can have one or two planning commission members meet all together and see where we can find resolution and middle ground on some of the issues. I think you've heard some consistent issues from all of the commissioners tonight, so you guys can take that back and process where that fits into your plan. Absolutely. I hope that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we have a motion to table the special land use permit for the evening. City Manager Seisland, if you would kindly call the roll.
Chair Lindsay,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chesterton,
Yes.
Commissioner Coletta,
Yes.
Commissioner Evans,
Yes.
Commissioner Vitaki,
Yes.
and Mayor Hodges.
Yes.
The motion is passed.
Thank you very much. And thank you to the members of the public that contributed to the public hearing. The last item under our new business is master plan subcommittee groups. We have had a few discussions, and as you all know, the City of Grosse Pointe Park, we have a draft master plan. It is available on the city website. We are in the public comment and review period. So for any members of the public that would like to take a look at the draft, there is a survey that you can participate in and let us know what your priorities are. And you also have the opportunity to send in your comments to City Manager Seisland. He's going to be taking those, compiling them, and then sharing them with the committee. What we would like to do is take the draft of the master plan, and all of the commissioners have already had the opportunity to spend some time on it individually, but we'd like to break it down and do a little bit of a deeper dive. And that's going to help us to kind of hone our comments to send back to MKSK, our consultant, and just be able to be a little more informed. And then that way we can also communicate better with the residents on some of the goals in the master plan. So I need to thank Vice Chair Chesterton, as this is her area of expertise, and she has come up with 3 separate subcommittees. And those are a group that would take a deeper dive into what the topic is called as city form. So that would include taking a look at the zoning recommendations, permitting process, design standards, housing, business districts, and looking at the design of the business districts, not necessarily policy. And also looking at the idea of moving Grosse Pointe Park toward becoming a redevelopment ready community. The second subcommittee would look at, the topic is called mobility. So that would include looking at our streetscapes, items like bike lanes, parking, transit, things like crossings. So that would be another separate section. And then the last subcommittee would take a look at city services. This committee would take a deeper dive into infrastructure, which includes our water and sewer, looking at our schools, our parks, things like our treescape, and then also business districts. And again, looking more at policy versus design. How are we trying to incentivize new business, and what are we doing to support current businesses in Grosse Pointe Park? And what I would love to do is see our 6 commissioners pair off and then have City Manager Seisland and Mayor Hodges join subcommittees, as they see fit, where their interests and where their expertise lies. And that first subcommittee, Commissioner Chesterton and Commissioner Bataki, I think you guys would be a great pair to work on that, especially with Commissioner Chesterton's expertise in items like zoning and permits. So Commissioner Bataki, I just want to check in with you and see if that would be, you think that would be a compatible subcommittee for you?
That'd be fine. Yes.
Okay, great. And then for the second subcommittee, which we're kind of calling mobility, I was hoping that Commissioner Santerre and Commissioner Coletta could work together on that. I've spoken with Commissioner Santerre. She has a background in construction and development, so she has experience with taking a look at parking, streetscapes, signage. So Commissioner Coletta, would you be agreeable to working with Commissioner Santerre on that subcommittee?
I'd be happy to. That'd be great.
Wonderful, thank you. And the last group, Commissioner Evans, that leads you and I to take a look at those city services, looking at infrastructure, our parks, and again, how are we supporting our businesses and incentivizing new business in Grosse Pointe Park? And I know that Commissioner Evans, you also have a background in construction and development. So I will be leaning on your expertise in that if you feel that would be a great fit for you.
No, it's perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. So Mayor Hodges and City Manager Seisland, I obviously leave to your discretion which of those subcommittees you would like to join, or if you'd like to meet with more than one. And in the conversation that City Manager Seisland and I have had about this, to let all the commissioners know, our expectation is if everyone could meet together once or twice, that kind of allows us to stay within the Open Meetings Act, where we can sit down in pairs and just kind of dig a little deeper, pull out positives, negatives, what are our priorities for all of these topics in the master plan, so we can give some good feedback back to our consultants as they come up with that final draft. And then the hope would be that we can present that and have some conversation as well as some recommendations for MKSK at our February meeting. So Mayor Hodges, I wanted to ask you first, how do you feel about those subcommittees? And is there an area where you would like to work with our commissioners on in particular?
The little voice in my head, thank you, by the way, Chairperson Lindsay, suggests that, yes, I think these are important categories to look at. I also would recommend, and perhaps City Manager Seisland would want to weigh in too, on taking the luxury of, stepping back a little bit too, not so much at the micro level, but thinking about what pieces might be missing overall. Some of the things that enter my mind, and we've discussed this before, would be all the city-owned properties that are inside and outside of the jurisdiction, and really thinking strategically and tactically about how those might be woven into an ultimate plan. And then certainly infrastructure is so important right now. If we really think about the, today, where the pinch points are, and then also where the opportunities are, that infrastructure really does need some of those elements may need to be separated out. And so it's more than just a policy question. It's a capital question as well. And then thirdly, really understanding the moment that we're in from a stimulus funding standpoint. Those dollars need to be spent by 2024, and a lot of those decisions are being made at other levels of government as well as locally. So how do we make sure we seize that opportunity and really direct some resources towards bringing those dollars to the table in an effective way, by making sure we're shovel ready, so to speak, on knowing where those investments should happen. So maybe a piece of us break off a bit, and I don't know if that's City Manager and I or you or whomever, but really accelerates that piece of it so that we don't miss that moment. And if that, I'd even be open to saying we delay some of the other pieces of it in order to not lose this moment with those dollars and with other similar sources of funding that could really help us solve those pinch points. So, I guess just to sum it up, yes, let's keep the focus on, some of the categories that you've already identified. That's obviously important for our long-term plan, but really looking at the document strategically at a higher level as well, and where the gaps might be, and then making sure we don't lose this moment from a stimulus funding standpoint, and certainly from an infrastructure standpoint, because we have to be in crush it mode. We've really got to focus every resource on solving that issue. So how can we ensure that we're walking in tandem with this process and juggling the two freight trains that are heading at us at slightly different speeds?
Yeah. And I absolutely agree, and we've had this discussion as well. And like you suggested, that might be good for you and City Manager Seisland to do that deeper dive. One of the things that I did want to share with residents as we're looking at the master plan, this is our guidepost. This is our aspirational document for our community. And we have all of these different topics that we are looking at, and while they are all important, I want everyone to understand that they are not mutually exclusive. If we are focusing on infrastructure, which I believe we would all unanimously say is our top priority right now, given the situation that we've been in this last 6 months in particular, We can look at infrastructure, make that a priority. We are in a moment in time where we'll have the opportunity to capture hopefully some federal dollars to help improve things like our lead line replacement, look at our stormwater systems. But it doesn't mean that we have to neglect other parts of the master plan. And it also doesn't mean that they all share equal weight. So we can take a look at things like, again, if we're going to look at our water and sewer system, that may not be as important as a new playground at Patterson Park right now, but we can still talk about both of those issues. So what I think we should do is take a look at, because we do need to spend a little more time on review, the public comment period. City manager, the minimum date that we have to keep the public comment period open is July, sorry, January
26th.
January 26th.
Minimum.
Okay, I was going to say 25th or 26th. I do want to ask the commissioners, do you feel that if we close the public comment period right before our February 2nd meeting, do you feel that gives the public ample time to review the document, comment, and do you feel that that gives you ample time, again, to also do that deeper dive into the document, or would you like to extend? So Commissioner Chesterton, I see your hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to, again, since we did things a little backwards on this plan, not backwards, we did things a little atypical on this plan. Typically the wider part of the funnel is at the beginning. The brainstorming, the committee work is usually done at the beginning of the master plan process. And we're doing it sort of at this end. I just wanted to be mindful of where we are in terms of with our consultants. I don't know where they are in terms of hours or fee or scope or anything. I want to make sure that we do what's right for the community. We do, and we make sure that we respond to the community comments for those that have taken the survey. I want to make sure that we're pushing one more time if people are home for the holidays to review the plan, make the comments. But I also want to make sure that the committees that we just formed, which all sound like great ideas, we have essentially rules of engagement, and we know exactly sort of what we're looking for and limited. We have expected outcomes from that, and we all are marching with the same set of directions in terms of the tasks that we deliver at that February meeting. So, Chairperson Lindsay, I did not answer your question. I did not say anything about timing, which is what you were asked. But I would like to just offer that I think we need a little bit more framework around what we would be delivering in February. I believe that unless the public comments substantially come in with changing narratives and themes, I believe that outcome is probably feasible, but I can't answer for sure unless we have sort of a structure around where that guidance would be given.
Absolutely. And I think my goal is, and I can work with City Manager Seisland on this, on creating a guiding document, a checklist that we can all look through to see if the action items in the master plan are correlating with what we're hearing from both the public and what we are seeing as the forward future for our city. Mayor Hodges, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Lindsay, I think we've followed the milestones and process established by MKSK to get us to this point. So that's excellent. I would see the outlier being more in some of our neighboring jurisdictions. I know I've had an opportunity to touch base with the new planning director for the city of Detroit, Antoine Bryant. He's a rock star nationally, and he's drinking from the fire hose because he's brand new to his seat. And I would really like to, and City Manager Seisland and I have reached out to him, as well as Hakeem Berry, to talk about myriad things, of course, but certainly the master plan has to be a really important conversation with them. We have to make sure that they intentionally have received it. So that to me would be the only outlier, would wanting to connect meaningfully with our neighboring jurisdictions so as to share the common goal of being a community that's working collaboratively with our neighbors and in a meaningful and substantive way. And I think having their input could be quite powerful given the caliber of professionals that they are. So I wouldn't want to set a deadline. I don't think we should delay in any way. We need to get this process buttoned up and done, but I wouldn't want to preclude us from having a meaningful opportunity with them. And hopefully we can achieve it within that time frame. But if not, we should make sure that that happens before closing the comment period.
Absolutely. City manager, to that, I did want to ask, have all of our neighboring communities received the document?
Yes, they have received them. They're still in review right now, as Mayor Hodges said, and this is something that her and I are working with the city of Detroit. Now there's like City of Grosse Pointe in their review, along with other entities. If you don't mind, I got a couple quick comments to make, real short. I do appreciate Commissioner Chesterton for working on this, and Chair Lindsay, as you guys were putting these groups together. And one thing I want to remind the public and everyone here tonight is that the good part with these comments here is that we're able to take a look at it and see, you know, what are maybe some top priorities that we may have missed in the initial run of this master plan. So as we're going through our groups right now, we're able to take all those comments, put into there. If, for example, Mayor Hodges said infrastructure, maybe we add in there more about coastal resiliency, or maybe it's something more about businesses. This gives us the opportunity with the public that we can tweak a little bit of those areas, look at those comments, and, you know, it gives us a good breather, because obviously we had a couple of those events that happened earlier this year that changed a little bit of how we should think moving forward, along with others. So those are my comments. Appreciate it. And I probably will be a floating manager going to a couple of those, but I'm particularly interested in infrastructure, Chair Lindsay.
Okay, that sounds great. So what City Manager Seisland and myself, and again, I will probably ask Commissioner Chesterton for some guidance with her background on this. We can create a document to give to everyone. So that way we have, the teacher in me is going to call it a rubric, whether it be a rubric or a checklist, or, you know, a guidepost of what we should be looking at in terms of comments, pros and cons, and setting priorities. And again, for residents who are watching, at the end of the master plan draft, you will find action items, and that's a really helpful part of the document, where it does talk about short-term and long-term goals, and kind of ranking all of those different subtopics into priorities for all of us. So that is, all we have on those subcommittees, which leads us to our next item, which is old business. Do any commissioners or the mayor or the city manager have old business that we need to discuss? All right, not seeing any hands. We will move to public comment on non-agenda items. City manager, do we have any members of the public?
Chair Lindsay, I have no written public comment, but I do see I have one hand up for spoken public comment. So give me 1 second to share my screen and have a timer. Okay, thank you. So my first comment is Brian Vosberg. Brian, if you can state your name, city residence, and please go ahead.
Brian Vosberg, City of Grosse Pointe Park. And I was just wanted to comment on tonight's meeting. Just wanted to thank the Planning Commission for the hard work that's gone into it, not only with the reviewing of this complex project that you are looking at on Weyburn, but also the agenda as the whole, as well as the training that was done tonight by the planning staff that supported this. So I really appreciate the dramatic increase in professionality of this planning commission, and I hope that this is the beginning of more to come. So thank you very much for all your hard work.
Thank you. Chair Lindsay, I have no other public comment.
Okay, Thank you, City Manager Seisland. And with that, I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting tonight, if someone would like to put that forward.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Coletta, seconded by Commissioner Vitaki. We will do a voice vote on this. All in favor of adjourning our meeting, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? The ayes have it. Thank you very much, everyone, for your time tonight, and have a very happy holiday.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Good night,
Thank you.
everybody.
Night.
Thank you.